Today we are talking about the LSAT. How can you conquer the LSAT? Especially if you are someone that is dealing with a learning difference, test anxiety, or any other situation in which accommodations would be helpful. Welcome to another episode of Break Into Law School. My name is Sydney Montgomery, and I specialize in working with first-generation and minority applicants. Today, we are talking about the LSAT. How can you conquer the LSAT? Especially if you are someone that is dealing with a learning difference, test anxiety, or any other situation in which accommodations would be helpful. I am ecstatic because today I get to share my stage with Jasmeene Burton-Martin. Jasmeene was a former Montgomery Admissions Consulting student. She is currently a brand associate and she is a boot camp instructor. She is an incoming first-year student at Northwestern Pritzker School of Law. She is also a fellow Princeton alumna, graduating with a degree in sociology and a certificate in theater. I'm really excited that she is here to help us navigate the LSAT. She is an LSAT tutor with Tutoring by Jasmeene. Her website is super easy, jasmeene.com. Gotta love having an original name. And on top of all of this, she is really passionate about education law, about creating policies and legislation that help affect and make a more equitable and accessible educational future for vulnerable students and families, which is something that is really near and dear to my heart because I care a lot about equity in education. So, without further ado, I am going to bring her up.
Hi, Sydney. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and agreeing to share your expertise because I tell my students all the time, listen, I am not an LSAT tutor. So there's only so much information that I can give. But you are an LSAT tutor, and you are also someone that cares deeply about access to first generation and minority students and increasing representation in the legal world. So I know that you are going to drop some amazing gems for us today. But the first thing I just want to do is ask if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Definitely. Well, I am the oldest of four, and I think that, that's probably one of the identities that I hold most near and dear because I think that, when you're the oldest, you're always trying to make sure everyone is feeling supported and everyone has the nuggets to do better than you ever did. And I think it really translates naturally into, why did I start tutoring? Why am I so passionate about education? It's because you always want people to learn, not just from how you did, but from how they have done at previous points in their own journey and being able to drive the continuous improvement. So I'm oldest of four, originally from California, decided to move out to New Jersey to go to Princeton for school, and then ended up here in Chicago. I was at the Illinois State Board of Education for a little bit, and just got such a big overview into, how is policy working out here in the Midwest. And Illinois is actually doing some really big things with educational funding and all of that jazz. But I think education for me became an interest because my dad is actually a school counselor. And so always being in the room and seeing how much does time and knowledge of systems make impact for people who otherwise would, be floating all around, having no idea what to do, what opportunities are out there. It's just been, I think, it's like a family affair. Yeah. Anything else you want to know? I tend to just kind of put it out there.
No, that was amazing. I didn't even know some of that stuff about you, and we've been working together for well over a year, so that was really good to know. And that's great that you have that kind of counseling background in your family. But I will ask you to talk a little bit about your law school application process. How did you figure out you wanted to apply to law school, and what were your very first steps? Did you Google something? Did you ask a friend? How did you navigate all of the different pieces that you had to learn?
Oh my goodness. So I, for a while, was thinking about pursuing either a PhD in education or a master's in ed. And so when I was in the summer before my senior year of college, I was taking the GRE, studying And as I began getting into my senior research project, as I started talking to more professors about their path to academia, I was having some second guessing myself, lots of thoughts. I had applied to do different teaching fellowships and actually had deferred my offer to take it up after I finished at the State Board of Ed. So that was my path. And I think as I continued talking to people, as I saw more behind the scenes, I was realizing, if you're going into education, a lot of time to be a professor, to be a policy advocate, you're getting really niche with your area. You can branch out and be a generalist if you're that stellar researcher. And I wasn't really sure if I was ready to pigeonhole myself yet and get really concerned about one issue or another. And so I decided let's see how this LSAT thing works. I was on Khan Academy using it, taking practice tests. I had no idea what I was doing. And I said, well, if I can do decently on this test, maybe I'll apply to law school. I took my diagnostic and I was like, well, this isn't terrible. Let's see what's going on. And so I had no idea what to do, where to start. I had Google searched and was overwhelmed by the amount of information that was there. It's truly the grace of God. I got an email through the Princeton Alumni Network, and it had Sydney's face on it. And Sydney was there. Her shining face was in my email inbox. And she said, let's connect if you have questions about the law school admissions process. And I figured, this is a Black woman who also shares some core identities I have, within the school, within being Black and a female who's passionate about educational equity. Let's just connect and see, does this make sense? And I think if I hadn't talked to Cindy, I would have been on a totally different trajectory. So I totally was planning on applying this upcoming cycle, the 2021-22 cycle. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I remember even in our initial conversation, you said, well, just apply this cycle. You're going to be fine. Quit second guessing yourself. Just apply. And I think that was really how we got started in terms of knowing, okay, how do I make a school list? How do I get clear on my reasoning for going to go? Because clearly I'm passionate, but can I articulate it? And I think that articulation process was also really freeing for me. And now I'm like, okay, now I know what my mission is. I can give you my elevator pitch, sure, but having it in my back pocket is something that I can say, yes, this is what I'm doing. I have my focus, and now people can see it and resonate, and I can be excited knowing what exactly I'm saying. That was such a pivotal point. So Sydney saved me.
Well, I think it's so true what you said about really knowing what you're doing, like your passion. That's something that I spend a lot of time working with my students on, is drilling down to that why law statement, because you need to know why you're going to law school. It doesn't need to be this amorphous, vague, I think notion. I want you to know deeply, and that can change. I don't like to put people in a box, but I think sometimes we just don't spend the time really investigating our own desires, really asking those questions. Why do I want to do this? But why? But why? Like, you come up with an answer and I want to ask you again, but why? You come up with another answer, but why? Drill down until you are like, that's the core of it. Right there. Those are where my values and my beliefs and my principles align to help me fuel this passion to go to law school and to have this career. And I think that was something that I really worked with you on, because you were someone, like a lot of people, who had so many interests, and you're like, I could do this, I could do that, I could do that, I could do that. And I was like, okay, but you can't do it all at once. So let's try to figure out what are the synergies between those desires and how can we really come up to your core why. And I think you did a really beautiful job of doing that. I was really impressed by that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It relates back to being able to be a generalist. You can get there when you're in school. And I think that was really helpful for you to say early on in the process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to back up a little bit, though, and talk real specific about your LSAT. You said you started with Khan Academy, you took your diagnostic. What was your experience going through the LSAT? And what did you discover while studying that just really resonated and applied to you?
Yeah, so again, I approached the LSAT from the perspective initially of, let me see if I can do well enough on this, then I'll go to school. And I think that, I think a lot of people fall into that spot. which, don't weed yourself out. Let schools tell you that there's a better fit somewhere else. Don't ever count yourself out if you think that there is a possibility there and that you really, really could do some impactful work in the law. So when I was studying, I initially spent a few months really just, and I think this was me giving myself limiting beliefs and capitalizing on them. But I was just like taking tests. I was doing all the drills that were available on Khan Academy. And I, started in the 150s and actually like went down quite a bit because I was just iterating with nothing in mind. And so something that really became clear to me was I didn't have strategies, even if it was a focus for the week. Like, what do I want to practice this week? And what do I want to keep in mind when I'm doing my logic games, when I'm answering logical reasoning questions? Um, and then, my mentors, and Sydney included, where you're trying to convene and think, okay, how can we help you actually get to a score that's going to give you options, that's going to give you like some financial aid rewards, or open up your school selection. We need to really think about placing you strategically to get to your educational law goals. So I ended up taking a commercial course that I loved. I took, oh goodness, Robin Singh, your course is amazing. Toastmasters. Oh my goodness. That's like my motivation. Robin and his amazing techniques there. I loved Toastmasters so much because what it really gave me was a structure. And I think that was the big thing that I had been missing so far. It was just knowing what to do next. And then also having the lectures in a style that worked for me. So I am somebody who needs to repeat a lot of information over and over. And so having video lectures where they were pretty free flowing, I could click through, go back and repeat. I'm so thankful that I was studying during the pandemic where the only option was virtual because, having that repetition, absolutely critical. What I also loved about Toastmasters was the idea that you're focusing in on how to approach the questions and building a strategy. And I think that's the other big thing too. You have to have a strategy overall for refining your practice and knowing what you're doing. But even on the question level, what is your approach to a strengthening question? Can you boil it down and articulate it to give you guidance and really cut down your time? As I started realizing, okay, this is all about knowing your rules. Like, what are your personal rules for each question? That really started to help me increase. My confidence went up. I knew the material a lot better. And then ended up taking the August Flex in 2020 and totally surprised myself. And so that was just, oh gosh. Yeah, it was a journey. It was definitely a journey, but I think, don't be afraid to to seek out help in building structure, because I think that's where a lot of people really panic. And then, you feel like you're spinning your wheels.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. Structure is really key. I've talked a lot about creating timeline, right? And really having a plan. And part of that plan is maybe a course that has that structure, because that can be with your essays or that can be with the LSAT. If you just sort of start, oh, I'm just going to study or I'm just going to write, then a month goes by and you realize you haven't actually made much progress. And then another month goes by and you realize you don't really know what you're doing. And then another month goes by and you've lost so much time, and time is so critical in this process. So I think that point about structure was really key for students that are trying to figure out what LSAT course should I do? What kind of study plan should I create? Especially for students that maybe have test anxiety or need accommodations. What are the things that they should look for in a course? Or how can they help figure out what the best plan of action is going to be for them?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think, this goes for everyone. There's so many different courses and resources out there. There's so many different tutors, so many different books. So, I would ask yourself, what kind of learner are you? Are you somebody who needs the audio? Are you someone who needs to see it on paper? Are you somebody who needs someone to walk you through chunk by chunk? And I would probably make a laundry list of, what works well for me? What do I wish I had? And maybe what doesn't work so well? And then try to suss out different programs and different books. It's okay to shop around. And I think often, this process of studying can become really expensive. We feel if I bought this book, I need to work through this book. It's okay to say, this book really is not doing it for me. It's not conversational enough. It's too dense. I'm going to try something else. You can always return a book if you buy it, right? Just keep the receipt. Um, or, trade with people. That's also something that you could do. Do you study better in groups? Do you study better by yourself in an isolation, like with the videos repeating? Like that was definitely me. I get super distracted. Um, and then as you get into courses, I learned yesterday, like Blueprint, some people, mixed reviews on, depending on where you're coming from, what you need from it. But if you're somebody who has trouble really reflecting on, like for reading comp, for example, where the information in the passage can come from to solidify your answer, like that's a really great feature that they have in Blueprint, is to highlight, specifically where is the reference. Whereas in Test Masters, you would get a video afterward explaining verbally how that looks. So it's okay to, contact companies and look at their support pages, look at the videos they have on YouTube and see, how do they present information? That's a really great way to go about it. There's also a lot of options for folks, if you have the fee waiver, like LSAT Demon and Seven Sage, I think are the big things that people throw out there on Facebook and all the different forums, Reddit. Those are, for people who need the consistent practice. Everyone probably needs practice in some way, but do you need focused practice on question type specifically? Have you built that strategy? Do you need it to be more guided and like focused in iterating to get that result and have your strategies? Or are you somebody who naturally thinks that way? And I'd also say, thinking about like, once you have a structure, how much accountability do you need? Are you a self-starter? Are you like me and you kind of struggle if you don't know what to do? And I would ask yourself, if you're finding resistance, you're struggling, if you're feeling really downtrodden, ask yourself, what's contributing? Like what in an ideal world do you need? Like, do you need more time? Because if you're going to say, oh, I need more time to study, then it might be a good idea to shift your schedule and think, how do you build on that time? If you feel like you need somebody to like guide you through questions, then it's okay. Maybe seek out a tutor who's really going to say, okay, did you do this? Can we make this a little more concrete for you and keep you accountable? A lot of the things you're feeling, like we can react to them and panic and kind of hide, or we can say, okay, what does that indicate that I need for this process? And then you can think about solutions once you articulate like your needs. So long-winded response. But I think,
No, it's perfect.
so important to think like, what do I need? And if you're somebody with testing anxiety, or if you have an accommodation, like I have massive testing anxiety, full disclosure, thinking about how does that show up for you? Because a lot of it is going to come down to how do you strategize? Courses might give you some tips and tricks here and there, but the odds are, talking to a general population, you might not find something that really, really fits for you in terms of like helping you calm down. Some people it's mantras, some people it's deep breathing. But thinking about how does my anxiety show up, or, if I'm having trouble focusing, like what does that look like? And try different things. Maybe this week you're going to try like taking the deep breath before you answer the question. Maybe you're going to think about, okay, if I'm getting distracted, I'm going to take one sentence at a time and thinking with the question in mind, what's the point? Yeah. And just kind of thinking about like, what are you experiencing? Why are you experiencing it? And maybe how can you address it? I think has been really, really helpful.
No, I love that. And it's so important too because God, there were so many good gems that you just dropped. One of the things that I really loved was trying it out, right? I think that there are a lot of programs. You mentioned even Test Masters, but, LSAT Demon, the LSAT Lab, they all have these places where you can try it out for free. I think it's really good to think about, I love Test Masters Online. That's what got me to where I am. Jasmeene and I had the same LSAT score. We're twinning. And Robinson got me all the way there. But I know they have live classes. I don't vouch for them. I don't know as much about them, but I know that they do have live classes if you're someone that needs to go, and see someone live, like a teacher. I also know that, LSAT Demon and LSAT Lab both have those live classes. I know LSAT Lab has a monthly thing that includes a once weekly tutor. So figure out what those support networks are. I know that LSAT Demon also has the accountability study groups. So if you're looking for something that also comes with built-in community, when you work with me in a boot camp or one-on-one, you'll get an accountability pod, you'll get that support. But if you're not working with me, but you still want that support, then ask to see what are some of the other things that come with the test prep. Like, can you also get community? Because I think community is everything. It's really big.
Totally. And I think on that note too, like, don't be afraid to ask. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, some people have developed this skill because it is a skill, and other people I know, I'm still learning how to just ask questions and ask what's available. But
Mm-hmm.
like when it comes down to it, this is such a process where advocate for yourself. And even if it's saying, what do you have available? Can I try this? Whether it's a commercial company or whether it's a tutor, like, do you have samples? What would you
Mm-hmm.
recommend that I look at? Um, Almost everyone's got YouTube videos that you can look back on. Almost everyone has like an info page and FAQs. And every now and then, like, you can get FaceTime to chat with somebody and say, hey, I have these concerns. How do you address it? Um, Totally make sure that you're shopping and asking questions that are going to give you the answers you need to make a
Mm-hmm.
good and informed decision. And it's okay if the things that you need change a couple months from now. It's
Mm-hmm.
totally okay because it's a process where, you start by content building and really getting to know, like, in the weeds, what does this
Mm-hmm.
question do? And later like, it's going to become about strategy. How do you do that even better and quicker? How do you, like, really shift your mindset? Um, Courses are really good for the content. And I think, ultimately, some people self-coach and some people seek out coaches. It's okay to shift. Just always pay attention to what you need. And I think it'll get you where you need to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of what you need, though, and paying attention to that, I know I'm very open about the fact that I have ADHD. I was diagnosed well after law school, but it made so much sense looking back on it. And I know that's something that you and I actually share. And there's this misconception that you can't be a high achieving student and also have ADHD or learning difference, and we're both the poster child for why that doesn't make sense. But you work a lot with students on getting accommodations for the LSAT exam. Can you tell me the top three things that students need to do if they're trying to get accommodations, or even also maybe top three mistakes that students make? Like, how can we nail this accommodations process?
Oh, goodness. I feel like, um, I don't know if I would classify it as mistakes, but I think people don't realize that they can ask. And I think that's like one of the most well kept secrets, unfortunately, is that, I think, I don't know how many times, like, I'll talk with folks and I'm like, okay, well, what do you feel like you need? In an ideal world, like, if you had a resource, like, what would it be? It's time. Oh, well, why do you need time? Like, I just feel like I waste so much time, like, panicking. I'm like, you might have test anxiety. I don't want to tell people to liberally, like, just diagnose themselves. But if you think about, like, what's available, like, there's things, you can get breaks. Like, 5-minute breaks is a really easy ask. If you like, you can even get accommodations if you, like, have a broken arm, things like that. So I would just say, look at the accommodations page and see, is there something that might help you? And if you don't see it on the page, I encourage you, call LSAC, talk to your doctor or therapist, see if, given what you're experiencing, is there something that's a reasonable accommodation? They have to give you reasonable accommodations on these tests. That they can build in for you. Just, like, know that you can ask. I feel like so many people, especially if you're the first lawyer in your, well, soon to be the first lawyer in your family, or if you're a person of color, we do not ask for these things. The statistics show that, like, we are excluded from a lot of these asks, and it's just like we're excluding ourselves. So go forward and ask. I would also say, you want to make sure that there is legitimately something that warrants your ask. And so you're going to need a doctor's note, some kind of professional, a therapist is totally fine if you've got anxiety or something else going on. But also, no, it doesn't have to be just mental health, like physical ailments too. If you're somebody who, I don't know,
I had a
I
dance
think you have
injury.
vision, dance injuries. Yeah. Like, there are accommodations for those to be able to get up and move during your breaks or to have an extended break. If you're somebody who has vision issues, you can ask for a print, like, paper version. Um, these things are there to make sure that you're spending your time and your energy on the test and you're not managing yourself. Like, it's only equitable for you to have the full time that everybody else would have. It's just for some people, it looks differently. So make sure that you have a provider that's willing to write you documentation. And I would say ask early, because a lot of times doctors, therapists, they usually need some time to get these requests in. And so sometimes it's not our fault. Like, we're like, oh, I just didn't realize I could ask. Um, Ask them, try to lead with, okay, here's my filled out forms. Here's what I'm asking for. Try to make it as simple as possible for them, but try to do it as early as you can. You do have to be registered for the actual test to be able to, submit your accommodations request. But if you haven't picked a date yet, but you know this is on your mind, it's a conversation you want to have, start the conversation with your providers early, just so that way they know what's going on and can be prepared to write that for you. You don't want any surprises at the end when you're registered for your test and counting down the days.
Awesome. Awesome. So I have the first one, correct me if I'm wrong, is to make sure that you're asking, make sure that you're thinking about what you need and thinking about what those different accommodations might be and what would make it, an equitable situation for you. And the second part is still ask, but like make sure you ask the right people and make sure that you're
Mm-hmm.
asking them early and on time with your paperwork filled out. What would be like a third best practice for students that are looking to get accommodations?
So I would say, something that often comes across my email is folks are saying, okay, I did this thing and I'm writing about this terrible experience I had. I was like, this is context, but and I think you say this in your courses in your boot camp, you know, tell them what you need and you don't feel like you have to explain and like just excuse everything away, but get to the point, what are you asking for? Detail it clearly so LSAC can see it. And then say, if this is your ailment, this is your condition, how are these going to actually help you? A lot of people leave that out in their initial drafts of their requests. And ultimately, if you look on, LSAC's reasons why they deny requests, people will spend so much time writing about a terrible experience they had, but they didn't actually answer the prompt, which is what accommodations do you need and how is it going to actually help you? And I think, going into the process, knowing what you're asking for, knowing that you're talking with your providers and getting their feedback on that, it can really help you to think, okay, if I put that at the beginning of my statement, that'll guide everything else that I include and save you some work as well. I would also say, you can mention that you didn't have accommodations in high school, or in college. Like I was diagnosed with anxiety and got accommodations for like modest testing things like my senior year of college. And that was sufficient. I could say, okay, my freshman year, I didn't have these things. I was diagnosed, and then we realized it actually made a huge impact for my whole last year. Like that's helpful context to add. Or if you're saying, maybe you were diagnosed after college. I was actually diagnosed with ADHD in April, so well after I'd taken everything. But that's okay. We can say, here's what my experiences were before I took the LSAT or I took the GRE, I took college exams. Here's my experiences. But, now that I know that I have this diagnosis, here's what I'm doing to mitigate it. But here's where I still need help. And I think this will be really helpful on the exam if you can provide these reasonable accommodations. Versus, oh, this is how this works. And I woe is me. It's unfortunate that this is a harder process for you, but unfortunately sometimes LSAC is trying to read so many things. They want to know your ask and then why. So I would just put that at the beginning and use that to guide your process. Sorry, I ramble.
No, that was so helpful. That was so helpful. Putting your ask and the reason why the accommodation will help you at the beginning of your request is probably gonna, that one piece of advice is probably gonna change so many people in the way that they approach the accommodations. So I think that you were so helpful in just delineating, it really is about making the ask, being clear, asking the right person, asking on time, and answering the prompt. I think that's so important. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your experience with the applications and writing your essays. What was that process like now that we've learned about your LSAT process?
Oh, goodness. So I am somebody who really likes to draw things out quite a bit, do one thing at a time. And so, earlier I said I was planning to apply the upcoming cycle 21-22. And so my reasoning was, maybe I'll perfect this LSAT and get a decent score, and then I'll work on my essays.
Yeah.
And I think also, I had so many interests. I felt like, I'm I know kind of what I want to do, and I hadn't gotten clear. And so I think the second that I realized, okay, get really clear on your why law. What's
Mm-hmm.
your why? That made the process go so much more quickly. And I think too, me knowing that I tend to procrastinate, I tend to, get lost in the sauce when I feel like I don't know 100% of what I'm doing or whether it's good enough. Knowing that I needed to, seek somebody out for such an important process was like the best investment I could have made in myself,
Mm-hmm.
and in my time. And so like I met with Sydney, like, okay, I probably was really obnoxious. I was like, can maybe like this week and like next week and maybe 2 weeks, because I knew that I was getting this churned out really, really quickly. There were no mistakes. I still wanted to submit early, get it done and get it done well. I really loved the fact that I could, write a draft. And even if I wasn't really sure that I had made the most progress, like getting it out on paper, and being able to say, okay, I have a couple questions, but like, what's your take? If you could just read for like 10 minutes, like, let me know. Like that was super helpful. And I think, part of that was me learning, okay, I do better and I'm able to move forward with feedback, even though if that feedback is, this is good.
Yeah.
That touch base is important, especially when we're, in a process that not a lot of people know about. Not a lot of people know the ins and outs. There aren't that many lawyers when you think about it. And so all of your friends are, out here doing whatever they're doing. And you're like, how do I distill my life into 2 pages?
Yeah.
It can be really isolating and it's really vulnerable. And so I think, if you know that you would benefit from just having somebody to like throw your concerns at and think, okay, does this make sense? Am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? Like just ask the questions, seek out help. Go to Sydney. Sydney is amazing. She makes everything so much more peaceful. But thinking about writing the essays, I really was torn between so many ideas. And, I mean, having some like involvement through my family with like, the criminal sphere. I was like, I'm passionate about juvenile justice, passionate about education, from like what I've seen, my work experiences, my personal experiences. And then there's like, but I also want to go do civil rights. I want to be, I don't know, like Ben Crump or whoever, and, fight for these families. I just want to do all the things. And I think it's important to know, like, again, you can get to all these things in school, but let your experiences kind of guide the narrative you're telling. And I think once I realized, like, okay, my resume says one thing, my volunteer experiences say another thing, and I can actually leverage these to show, like, okay, it's very clear that my next step is law school for this issue. I think it really guided it. And it comes back to like that organization, the timeline. Make your timeline, give yourself some deadlines. If you need accountability, get some accountability, and let your path and your calling, like once you've articulated it, let that guide your process. And it actually is smooth. Like it was a hard process because we were really churning it out really quick.
We were doing
so like, wow. Okay.
I believe in efficiency.
I love it though. And I think, when you think about like what takes people time, I think it is like not knowing where to start and feeling like you're going to be wrong. Like there's no wrong. The only wrong is stopping. Right.
Yeah.
And stopping without the intention of like sitting and marinating. Like that's okay. Cause you're going to come out of it knowing, oh, I liked this. I didn't like this. And that's actionable. But I think, oh gosh, I think the process of writing my essays was truly transformative because I just felt so much more confident in my mission. And I think it feels good to know that you can say, oh, I want to go to school to do this, and I'm going to achieve it doing this, and this thing. And, even if your experiences aren't all in one area of law, you'd be surprised how many experiences you have that demonstrate leadership, that demonstrate curiosity, that demonstrate that based off of a situation that you saw or experienced or partook in, that was enough of a leaping point to say, oh yeah, you should definitely, go and do this thing as a lawyer. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Life changing.
It's so important. I mean, I think I say this all the time. Your essays are so important. And it's not just your personal statement. It's your diversity statement. It's your optional essays. It's your everything, right? And I think there are so many students who say, okay, I'm going to focus on the LSAT and then I'm going to write my essays. But they are taking the August LSAT and they still want to apply in September. And they just kind of say, well, I can just knock out my essays in 2 weeks. And it's like you're doing yourself such a disservice, because repeatedly admission deans are saying that they have denied applicants with strong LSAT scores who have really weak essays. And it's just, it really shows. You want them to admit you as a person. You're not admitting getting admitted because you're a number, right? You want them to admit you because of who you are. And your essays are a way to show so many sides of you if you do it correctly. And, you know, so many students skip all the optional essays, which is a complete mistake, especially as we go into the cycle that is going to be at least as competitive, if not more competitive than last year's cycle. I cannot stress enough to you the importance of your essays. If you skimp and you don't invest in the time to really figure out who you are and be introspective, have that good writing, if you need guidance, in the links below, there is my free, absolutely free guide to applying to law school, which you will get a good start. But there's also a personal statement course that I have. You can join us in a boot camp. You can work with me one-on-one. You can just watch YouTube videos. But I'm telling you, you must invest in the time and the resources to get your personal statement right. It is one of those areas that I talk about in my free webinar. It is one of those areas that you can control and you want to be able to control. But speaking a little bit about the process and the ways that you can get support on the process, I wanted to ask you, Jasmeene, you seem to love this process, right? You are a tutor, you are a boot camp instructor with Montgomery Admissions Consulting. Can you tell me a little bit about why? Why do you tutor the LSAT? Why are you a boot camp instructor? What do you love about the process?
Oh my goodness. So I think I tie it back to some of my opening. I didn't even realize I was going to do this. Wow, look at God. But the idea that you want people to do better than you did, and you want people to feel more prepared, like they have more agency, that they are so equipped, and that they feel all of those things. I think that really goes back into like why I am doing what I'm doing. And I think too, if I had anything like any one thing, I think it was like really getting anchored into like accountability and support. I'm not a group study person. Like I know, like, I mean, now it makes sense. Like now I know I have like massive ADHD, but like I know that like I tend to get really lost when groups are happening, but like those quick check-ins just to make sure that you're on the right path, you can voice your concerns and just have some commiseration. I think that's something that I so would have like wished I had thought about. If I had done like my LSAT differently, I probably would have sought out a tutor, just even if it was like every other week, just to like, vent really quick and then go back into the prep. And I think, that was something that I was so appreciative of while writing my materials. I know that I definitely, in my essays, like I had a point where I was leading with trauma, a totally different thing. It was trauma filled. It was like decent writing, but it was still revealing a lot like I didn't think was necessary. It didn't really show a lot about me. It just showed a lot about how I felt. And I think, if I had gone through that myself, oh gosh, who knows where I would have gone. And I think being able to pull out an essay that, I was able to voice the concerns that I think were pent up in that original draft, being able to, really seek out, like, is this what I want to do? And being able to lead with that into an essay that is so much more powerful than I think I could have created by myself in the pressure that I was in. It's so important. And so I would say, I really love the fact that in the boot camps too, like, oh gosh, I wish there was boot camp, because I think it's a really great space to also have really, really small groups. You're all in the same space. You're going at the same pace, roughly. You're all able to brainstorm and mastermind around the content. This process is an isolating process, because again, like many of us are the first lawyer, will be the first lawyers in our family, and not many people know what it's like. Even people who are attorneys now, this process is so different. I mean, we like to say, oh, the college process has changed so drastically from when we were in college. Oh, the law school process is that way as well. So knowing that you're going with 3 or 4 other peers, and that you have instructors who really genuinely love the process, that have been through it, that's so valuable. And I love that, as you go through the process, like there's so many touch bases to get help in office hours. You have like sessions that are built into the curriculum to be able to get feedback, to voice your concerns again. You also are working with people, like Sydney, who, oh my gosh, like this whole process, like there's so many results. People are so not just getting into great schools, but they're like, I feel like you can also see the personal change that people go through in terms of the confidence, because ultimately, like, this is the beginning in really cultivating like confidence and surety in yourself. It has to be there in order to like keep motivated, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, in all the roles that I take, like I think it's really holistic and seeking out holistic things, because, mindset and your fears and concerns, being able to combat them, strategize around them, and lift people up. Like, that's like something that we really need in this field. And I
Yes.
think that's what I get most excited for. Sometimes, like, I literally spend a whole 5 minutes just being like, you're really smart. You've improved so much. And we have to remember that, because you have to be able to combat your limiting beliefs to, find yourself and keep yourself through the process. So, yes, I just love encouraging people to do good work, because you're doing good work. It's just a matter of like believing that you are and that you will continue to do it.
I love that.
Soapbox.
No, I love that. And I know that when you tutor students with the LSAT, you bring that mindset, you bring that holistic emotional side. And that's one of the reasons why we connect so well, because this could be a transactional process of helping someone with the LSAT or helping someone with their essays. But I think the thing that you and I both share is that we want to help you as a person. Like, I want to get to know who you are, like who is inside of you, and then how can I help you grow and flourish, and how can I help you reach self-actualization. And I love that that's something that we're really aligned on. I know we touched on it at the beginning, but how did the process end for you? Where are you going? Are you going with scholarship money? Let us know.
Yeah. So, I am so, so, so thankful to have had the support that I did this cycle. I know this upcoming cycle is going to be absolutely wild. And, technically this cycle is still going, stuff might still happen, but I'm super, super pumped. So initially, I definitely thought, I am going to my local school. It's probably going to be an unranked school. I'm going to do public interest. And now, like, I had never imagined being able to go to Northwestern. I'll be there in the fall, proud to wear purple. And I'm super, super pumped to say, like, I did have generous scholarship aid. And I think, over the course of the admission cycle, like, this is something I did in college with my mom. Like, my mom's my biggest supporter forever. Like, when in college, looking at the offers, we like to like see, oh, so how much would this have been in scholarship money? This year, it was probably like at least like good, like nearly $1 million worth of scholarships, depending on like the schools that I did get into.
$1 million worth of scholarships. Can we just? She said $1 million, but
like
keep going.
Nearly.
Keep
It's
going.
not a solid number, but there's a lot of money there, and I think having the knowledge, like, I definitely knew going in. I was like, I was expecting a ton of rejections. Honestly, I know that like my undergrad experience was not perfect. I know my LSAT, like, everyone's LSAT could be higher. Like, we don't all have a 180. It was really interesting knowing what to expect. And so to know that like my story really came through, my passions really came through, aspects of my life that I didn't know how to fit in were able to be worked in through the diversity statement in weird ways, and through the addendum, and through interviews. I know that those touches of personality and drive like really, really contributed into sealing the deal especially for Northwestern and schools of the like. So I'm super pumped to stay in Chicago.
You had fantastic offers, fantastic offers, and you were applying to dual degree programs. I mean, you crushed this application cycle. What are you most excited about going into 1L before we, take some questions?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think it's the opportunity to go back to school. I mean, I'm pretty candid about my experiences in undergrad. Like, I had everything going on. So know that like GPA is not like going to be the make it or break it thing. Believe me. And know that like if you experienced literally the world ending in undergrad, been there. Let's talk about it. I'm excited to do law school again, knowing so much more about myself and also being such a more confident person who has their priorities and a little bit more organization, because I think, I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm going. I know how I want to approach it, how I want to play it, how the connections I want to build, and the goals that I have. And I also know, like, I'm so much more supported than I think I've ever been. I am so excited to see what I am actually capable of, knowing that, like, I'm only doing what I love, again, in reading, writing, researching. I'm learning about the law and how it applies, and to do it with so much more support. Like, I'm like, wow, like, if I could make it and graduate undergrad, like, whew, I'm gonna really kill it here. And I'm just so excited to see, like, with the supports in place, like, what will I do? What doors are going to open up?
I'm so excited for you. I really am. I feel like you're going to be someone that takes the world by storm and kind of really makes a lot of change. I am so happy that you were able to take some time to spend with us this morning. We're so grateful. We're really so blessed that you just dropped gem after gem after gem about the LSAT, about navigating accommodations, about your essays, about your why law, about confidence and mindset. Where can people contact you? Where can they find you or learn more about the work that you do?
Oh my goodness. So I do have a website because I like having a name for a website. So if you want to go to jasmeene.com, JASM as in Mary, EEN as in Nancy, E.com. I've got a contact form there. You can learn a little bit more about me. I could probably drop my email if people want to talk about boot camp things, or you can reach out through Sydney's website as well. Like, oh my goodness, let's talk about boot camp. Let's talk about all the things. But yeah, like, feel free to get in contact. Like, would love to hear from you, to answer the questions. Would love to meet with you in boot camp. It's a fun time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also want to make sure that you plug the fact that you offer free reading comp classes, because that's how committed you are to equity. So yes, they can work with you one-on-one in tutoring, but you've got a lot of free content that is so helpful. So even if you're listening and you're not really sure, like, how the finances are working out, make sure that you definitely get into some of that free content, because it is amazing and it's such great value. We've already got some comments saying that this is great information. So I know that you're going to be contacted afterwards. And if you can't get in contact with Jasmeene for some reason, you can email me and I'll make sure to connect you guys. Guys, thank you so much for being here, Jasmeene. Thank you. Thank you for just all your wisdom and your guidance. And I know we're going to have you back, and I can't wait to see you soon. If this video was helpful to you, if you found it encouraging, go ahead and share it with a friend. Make sure that you hit that like button and subscribe. We put out new videos every week. And make sure that if you have a question, feel free to submit it to bit.ly/breakintolawschool. This has been another fantastic episode of Break Into Law School, and I will see you guys next time.